everybody, and welcome to the July 10th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Richard Migliori.
And we are just speeding like a runaway freight train towards Saratoga, but it's good to see a lot of 2-year-olds mixing it up before we get up there, and that's where part of the show, a good part of the show, we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that was my thinking as well. We've got 3 races from last week, and a couple of them are 2-year-old races, and as Richie said, we've got a lot of 2-year-old races coming up at Saratoga. We want to take a look at a couple of different trips that horses had, and the first one we're going to look at is the first race, actually, from July 2nd, and we're going to look at a horse who was bet first time out. They're all first-time stars, named Zozo, and Richie and I both have some thoughts about this firster.
Yeah, and Zozo got away clean enough, was able to get some position. Took her about 100 yards to sort of find her stride. You're going to see, as a rider, Irad Ortiz is riding her. Now she kind of clicks in, and he's got to get a hold of her, and now she's kind of caught up in the pocket a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good example of being inside with horses, how it can be difficult. But, I'm not so sure that difficult is bad, because you want, if you're not going to win first time out especially, to get what could be a good learning experience. And I think, and you agree, that Zozo may have gotten that.
Well, yeah, she's in behind a phalanx of horses here. She starts to take him up in behind the eventual winner, who was very good. Let's not discount what she did. But she's going to kind of pull Irad up onto heels here, and you're going to see when he has to steady, it breaks her momentum a little bit, but more so right here when the dirt hits her in her face, you can see how she reacted to that, and I think we both agree she kind of threw in the towel at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's the one good people to rewind that and look at that. If you missed her head going up and down, it's clear that the kickback hits her, and as Richie pointed out, horses are going to react differently to this. Listen, some horses will run through it, and obviously maturity will teach horses to run through it, but a first-time starter, and as Richie said, she threw in the towel, and to me, from a betting perspective, I actually kind of like that, because now she got beaten about 14 1/4 lengths in this race. Next time she runs, people are not going to be flocking to her, and she had a real excuse that you can't measure in distance.
No, you can't, and all horses react differently, and in the morning they may school them behind other horses, but the dirt doesn't come back nearly as hard as it does in the afternoon, so you're never really sure how they're going to react to it, and to me, she reacted dramatically to it, and that was the end of her day.
Yeah, and this is a firster for Tony Dutrow that took money, that can run, because we saw in parts of this race that clearly she has the ability to run, and I'm going to forgive this race. Now listen, you don't know who she's going to be against next time, but this is a horse I'll be looking for at Saratoga.
Now, for you, looking going forward, would you prefer to see her get an outside draw next time so she doesn't have to deal with any of that, or do you think this was enough to make her go forward off this and learn?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously you'd prefer to be somewhat outside of horses, but I'd rather get towards the inside than get post 10 in one of those races, to be honest with you. I mean, you'd like to think that she's going to be able to overcome this the next time, and it's another thing, Tony is going to see this, and he'll probably work with her to try to get her forward over it as well.
Yeah, I think she'll learn a lot from it, and I always want 2-year-olds more towards the inside, and I think this next race is going to illustrate one of the reasons why.
Yeah, well, we'll show a couple of horses. The next race we're going to look at is the second race from July 3rd, and this was a race where you had a long shot, much like the last one we saw, running off in the front end. We want to talk about 2 firsters. One of them is the horse with the red hat sort of dropping between. That's unauthorized. A first-time starter for Rick Violet, took a lot of money, will run 4th. The other one is the second-place finisher, Good Luck Gus, who be interesting to note jumping some footprints late in the race. But both of these horses are running at the end, and obviously Good Luck Gus ran well. I think unauthorized is going to get some attention off of this close, and I just felt like this horse might have been picking up the pieces as the race fell apart late.
Yeah, I did too. They didn't finish particularly fast. He was hustled to try to get position, kind of got out-footed, where Good Luck Gus, the eventual second-place finisher, who's starting to make a long, sustained rally on the outside, I felt like he was just a horse that was a little bit lost out in the clear. He didn't have anybody outside of him. They are herd animals. They're young horses, and there you can see he's making this long, sustained run, and I thought he hit his best stride inside the 8th pole and then jumped some track.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe neither of these horses knows what they're doing yet, but I agree. I mean, one horse, as you said, made the long, sustained, wide run and continued on with it. The other horse, and that, of course, is the second finisher, Good Luck Gus. The other horse, unauthorized, well, this horse just went to the back of the pack and made a run up the rail. Now, listen, maybe unauthorized needed a race badly and is going to benefit from this race, but I'm a little dubious of horses that just sort of make that sort of run towards the end of the race when the race is over, saving ground while everybody else, the other horses are second and third, they're tired from chasing, and at least this horse to finish second, or Rudy Rodriguez firster, at least this horse did some running earlier in the race.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And how many times do we see Rick Violet's horses are usually very well prepared for their first start? So when I don't see them show up and act completely professional and on the mark first time, I'm not usually looking for a huge improvement second second time, his horses usually are ready to run first time.
Especially when one gets bet. I mean, you'd have to believe that when a horse gets bet as much as that one did, you had a big field near 8 betting interests, 9 horses. The horse goes off 9-5. You got to think they thought he would run. He did not run that well. Maybe he'll improve, but I think he gets bet next time, and I'm against him. Good luck, Gus, the better of the two.
I agree, and I like the way he finished, and you could still see his greenness as he ran to the eventual third-place finisher. He kind of looked at him and slowed down a stride or two. Then he got past him, and he saw those little footprints, and he jumped that. So he's a horse that's got a lot of improvement in him.
And he was very green in that race and did run well. The last race we're going to look at, as we're doing 3 today, is the 4th race from July 6th. And this is not a very good field of maiden claiming New York breds on the turf. But there was a horse, a second-time starter named Fictional Character, that really did catch our eye. And the first thing you note is this horse, a 49-1 shot ridden by Clarence Daniel, breaks slowly, a couple lengths slow. Thought, though, that Clarence did a good job, frankly, at least who stays a little bit more there, of getting him to the inside and getting him into position.
Well, he did a really good job with that. The horse didn't break well. He was able to just get him right over to the fence, save every inch of ground. And sometimes what helps you can also hurt you, because then he does encounter traffic.
Yeah, he gets in traffic at this point, and especially, and we'll show it at the top of the stretch, where he gets that position, because obviously the best situation you want is you can save ground and angle out sweetly into the stretch and be able to get clear, and that's not what happens with Fictional Character.
No, he's got a horse directly to his outside with Corey Lannery that's just holding his position, not doing anything he shouldn't be doing, and he tries to kind of muscle his way out at one point about the 5/16 pole and really never gets out to that clear path after saving all that ground. And you know how I always felt, if you can save as much ground as possible early, then it allows you the ability to get out and lose some ground later on and give your horse that freedom.
Yeah, no, and he wants to get the freedom. And listen, we're talking about a rider that doesn't ride that many horses, and we're not trying to be hard on that rider. He's not going to get the opportunity to ride many good horses and gets very few mounts. All things considered, he did a lot of things right in here, and some of it also is some bad luck.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what turf trips are. You can ride the perfect race, save every inch of ground, and then it just doesn't work out. What impresses me about Fictional Character, though, is how long he stayed in the bridle. He is still in the bridle, and you can see even some of the horses that ran 1, 2, 3, they're already under a ride where he's still pulling in the bridle, searching for space. Horses don't tend to stay in the bridle that long. It bodes well for this horse going forward.
You almost wonder if he had been able to get out in the clear when he started to get his momentum, the 6 hadn't shut the door on him, how much closer he could have been, because, I mean, he runs by everybody else in this race. He's really running this horse and lugging in a little, too.
Well, he got to lugging in a little bit there, and, you know, when you don't get that freedom, all that empty space in front of you, it's still making a horse think about it, look at things. I think he was the only horse really running at the end, and if he can work out a decent trip, you know he has to be very tough next time.
Right, and it's hard to imagine he's going to be that short a price, being he was 50-1 in here and he finished 4th. But Fictional Character, he's a horse that, I got to tell you, they ran this race again, and especially had a more experienced rider on him, and not to be too critical of this rider who did a lot of things right in here. I think he'd be very tough to beat against this field.
Yeah, but one thing now, going to Saratoga, these will be true two-turn races. Trips are really going to play a big factor in a lot of the turf racing up there, and I'm sure it's going to give us a lot to talk about.
There are always plenty of races for trips and traps, but we could always use your help. Trips and traps at NYRAinc.com.